Hey everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be during this conversation. My name is Mike Colellian. I'm one of the career coaches here at the Yale School of Management in the Career Development Office. It's a pleasure to be meeting you in whatever capacity we might call this meet and greet. We're excited to give you a little bit of understanding and context around the media entertainment industry. We have three wonderful students here to share their experiences, answer any questions you have, and really help you understand what SOM brought to them and what it has to offer with people interested in that space. I'm going to give a little bit of context in a second on the Career Development Office. The only thing I ask is, as you're listening, please add your questions directly to that Q&A bubble. And then that way we can start to hear what you have to ask and what you have to say. So I see that there's a few students still rolling on in. And then once it looks like the number's getting set, we'll have Chang start his introductions. All right, Chang, let's give it a roll. So kick us off. So Chang's going to go first, then we'll have Monica and then Stephanie introduce themselves. And as I mentioned, I'll just give a little bit of context on the Career Development Office here at SOM, and then we'll get to some of your questions. Go ahead, Chang.
Cool, sounds good. Hi everyone, my name is Chang and I'm from Canada. My background is in mathematics and accounting, and before SOM, I was an assistant manager at Deloitte, specifically in its assurance segment. And came to SOM, mainly wanted to pivot into a different location, wanted to go somewhere warmer from Canada, so San Francisco, and also was looking for like technology and media entertainment as an industry pivot. And this summer, I worked at Electronic Arts in their subscription service, doing both data analytics and business strategy, and going back to the same function, same firm for full time.
Awesome. Chang, thank you very much. Monica, same question to you.
Hi, I'm Monica Das. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. I studied English and film studies in undergrad at Bowdoin. And then I did something completely different, and I worked in market research for a boutique market research and strategy consulting firm focused on the financial services industry. And I came to SOM also sort of hoping to pivot into something at the intersection of media and entertainment and technology and marketing strategy. I interned at IBM over the summer in their market development and insights group. And I am still interested in all of those things, but not sure what I'm going to be doing next year. And I'm also a leader in the Media and Entertainment Club, so happy to talk about that later.
Awesome. Monica, thank you very much. And Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. Great to be with you today. My name is Stephanie Wayne. Home for me is Bethesda, Maryland, and Los Angeles. Prior to SOM, I did Nielsen TV Ratings Emerging Leaders Rotational Program. I worked in data science and product management. And then for my undergraduate degree, I went to University of Florida and studied math.
Cool. All right, thank you all. And as I mentioned on the front end, for a couple people who came on as we were kicking this off, I'm Mike Colellian from the Career Development Office. I've been at SOM now for 5 years. I've been in the capacity of a coach for all 5 of those years. And personally come from a background where I've worked at other schools and worked in financial services before I was here. What I wanted to do before we dive into the questions is, and I think I see a lot of the Q&As coming in. As you have questions, please send them through. We'll be sure to address them as much as we can. And just wanted to give a little bit of context on the Career Development Office, the structure that we have and the way that we work across industries, and including media entertainment in that space. So our office, at the highest of levels, we service all students. And so we work with students who do some of the more traditional MBA recruiting focuses, some students who are doing their own startups or organizations, really any student what they want. We want to meet students where they are. And so in order for us to do that, we try to bifurcate our office into 2 key constituents. One constituent is our employer relations team. Those are people who are in the market, working with companies who are interested in coming to Yale, working with companies who may not be aware of Yale, trying to get them and attract them to come to campus or come virtually to campus, as the case may be at the moment. And they're the ones who are really trying to ensure that the representation of all of our employers is being met for the students and they're interested in. And so we have an employee relations member who works with all media entertainment organizations. They work with technology organizations, they work with consulting organizations. And so they're out there trying to understand and work with the students to understand what companies are interested in and how to get companies best engaged with as many students as possible here on campus. We also have a part of our office called the Career Education and Coaching Team. I'm a coach, so I'm also on that team. And what we do is we work with students on all the attributes that they need to achieve their specific career. So sometimes that's the most basic of, hey, I need a resume or a cover letter review, my collateral's getting ready. And sometimes that's very exploratory and helping students really understand what is it that drives the decisions that I make, what are my key skills and my key strengths that I want to utilize, and how do I think about where I can find those opportunities in the market. And what we really try to do is we try to be as customized as we possibly can to every single student, and our coaches are trained to be industry, function, location agnostic, and really just help people find what it is that they want. And we also try to be industry focused, where we do have people who specialize on the employer side with particular industries, ensuring that we have the right relationships and we have the right connections. And one of the ways that we really try to bring those things together is through club representation. So Monica, I know mentioned, she's one of the co-leaders of the Media and Entertainment Club. We're going to talk a little bit about how the club works here. And so we as CDO members work directly with the club on the employer side and on the coaching side. So you'll see how that relationship comes to fruition and we get those connections across industries. If you have questions specifically about the CDO, we can certainly take those offline. I really want to spend the next 40 minutes or so getting the questions that you all have for the students. For Chang, for Monica, for Stephanie, if you have a specific question to one of them, that certainly wouldn't be a bad thing, and we can direct the questions there. And if you have more general questions, send them through, and we'll get as many of those answered as we possibly can. To start, I'm going to lead off with a question that I'll ask the students to go back. Now it's 2 years, year and a half, something like that. Somewhere before they came and entered Evans and came to SOM, which is to go back and think about as you were making the decision to go back and get an MBA, and then specifically to come to SOM. And again, if you can speak about it in terms of media entertainment, that'd be great. But if it's in terms of what you're trying to do, like what was the driver to that decision, and how did you make the choice to come back and go towards the path you're going to? So Chang, we'll go back to you and keep the same order. So I'll leave Chang, then Monica, and then Stephanie on that particular question.
Sounds good. I'm going to start with one to save some for Monica and Stephanie. So for me, my biggest reason was the community. So I came to SOM 3 times before making the decision that I wanted to come. And through those 3 times, like I talked to different people, different students, and attended different events. And this community just gave me the feeling that like it's very easy to blend in and it's very easy to make friends here. And that's what definitely like one of my biggest drivers of choosing a school.
Awesome. Thanks, Chang. Monica?
Yes, I completely echo Cheng that a lot of the reason I chose SOM in particular was about the community. I would say when I look back and think about why business school at this particular time, for me, it really was that I had been working at the same company for 5 years. I knew I didn't want to think about financial services for my whole rest of the career, but I also, after 5 years of work experience, didn't want to just try something. I wanted to sort of set myself up to, whatever I did next, be in a position to really have a career that was on a sort of track that I felt good about and thought, I don't know, I wanted a little more time to reset, be deliberate, and then whatever I did next be set up for success. And I thought it was a good time to go back to school, and that a business degree is a good combination of like general enough to keep my options open, but also really would help me with whatever I wanted to do next.
So I knew that I wanted to be in LA post-grad. So while it might have made more sense or seemed logical to go apply to the West Coast schools that were more in the middle of the media and entertainment industry, I knew that if I were to do an industry switch, some of the East Coast schools would transfer and not necessarily vice versa. So once I kind of narrowed it down to that, what made SOM stand out the most to me was I thought previously that business and society meant that SOM was sending people on the nonprofit route or the traditional consulting investment banking route. And I was attending an admissions event in Los Angeles when I really learned it's about the intersection of the two. And that's what it made it stand up as my top choice.
Awesome. Thank you all. So Cheng, let's get to a different question now and look at as a first year and then leading into the summer. So I know you mentioned you were at EA before. Just talk a little bit about how you thought about choosing EA, choosing media, entertainment broadly speaking, and just what the first year was like as you explored and tried to think about what it was that you were going to do.
Okay, interesting. So I think for me, exploring was mainly for function. So I was trying to look, as I mentioned before, I was trying to change function, location, and industry, right? And EA fit all that. And I looked specifically for company and function because when I was talking to alums from EA and speaking with EA recruiters, they were saying I can. So like I told them I'm interested in data analytics because of mathematics background and interested in business because of my business background. So, and they're saying if you come, you can have the opportunity to do both. And that's what happened during my summer, right? I was doing data, I was acting as a data scientist at the same time I was doing strategy work. So I think that was the biggest reason. And I think just going about doing the recruiting and like the recruiting process, I think a lot of it is talking to different alums and just using the community as a network to understand the industry and also the nature of the work. And also, I think CDO, like the career office, helped significantly with my resume, with my cover letter, and with my communication and like how to communicate with different companies. I think so. So like here, you can set up meetings with CDO anytime you want. There's like a schedule that you can click into, and you can like book meetings with like one-on-one meetings to ask any question you want. And I used that a lot for like the entire first year, basically.
Awesome. Thanks, Cheng. Monica, similar question to you, just in terms of how you thought about the decision making of your first year and then ultimately ended up going to IBM. What was behind that?
Yeah, I think for me, so many of my decisions, like the SOM decision, have sort of come down to people and who I have ended up feeling connected to. And so similarly, my process last year was pretty broad. I talked to a lot of second years who sort of like anything that they had done that looked interesting to me, I sort of wanted to hear more about, went to a lot of info sessions, talked to some alums, and I sort of kept myself very open. So anything that seemed potentially interesting, I would just apply for, and then see how I hit it off with that team, how I felt about them. I really ended up just loving the people who I interviewed with at IBM. They seemed to really value curiosity and big picture thinking. And so I had a good feeling about it, and I accepted.
Cool. Monica, thank you so much. Stephanie, same question to you.
So this past summer, I interned for a fitness company called The Class by Taryn Toomey. And I was kind of starting recruiting last year, the traditional route of looking at like Hulu and Warner Brothers. And it was two things. One was realizing that all of our internships were going to be virtual. I was like, oh, wow, I really got to love where I'm working this summer if I'm going to be a slave to my computer screen all summer. And then two, it was just kind of the realization of these were jobs I probably could have applied to without SOM. So let me take on a role that's like a little bit more different. So I was doing data science and analytics for the company's online virtual workouts, which is actually really similar to working for, let's say, Hulu or anyone that's doing digital online viewing. And then I took a role on their retail team doing financial strategy and business strategy and analytics. And it was definitely all new skills that I'd picked up at SOM.
Awesome. Thank you all. I'm going to start to now transition a little bit to the questions that we're getting in from folks. So I'm going to move around instead of just going just linearly, first name alphabetized. First question I want to ask is just about process within recruiting across media and entertainment. And then I'm going to ask Cheng and Monica to start off, and then Stephanie, you had a different experience from a timing perspective. So Monica, I'll go to you first. In terms of your exploration process, there's a number of questions here about when did things take place? What was the process like for you? And then more specifically, how much did you leverage the SOM resources, our career management system, or CMS, to do that work versus how much were you networking within the industry yourself? So I'll have you and Cheng take that question first, and then Stephanie, I'm going to change it slightly when I ask you a similar one. But Monica, if you wouldn't mind just leading that off.
Okay, I will try to address all of those points. Let me know if I miss anything.
You'll get there.
So I would say the timeline for media and entertainment is very broad. Some industries are very structured, like consulting and finance happen very early. Media entertainment is a little bit more like tech in that some of the big companies sort of start posting in the late fall or early winter, but then a lot of the smaller companies do a lot more just-in-time recruiting. And so there are opportunities that pop up all through the spring. And so sort of depending on what you're targeting, if you're sure you want to work for a big company, you do want to start talking to people and ramping up your network and thinking about all of those, getting yourself ready to interview in the fall. Whereas if you're interested in working for a smaller company, that networking process can sort of go on a little bit longer, and you're not actually going to be applying probably until quite later. So you have to be comfortable with yourself and saying, no, I really don't want to do consulting. No, I really don't want to do consulting. No, it's true. I don't actually want to do that. I don't need the reassurance. So that's one piece of advice. In terms of, sorry, I feel like I lost a couple of the questions.
No, that was good. The only thing I'll ask just to follow up is like in terms of like what and where you accessed this information. How much of it was on your own versus CMS in the system?
I would say my process, partly because you have limited time and because I wasn't solely focused on media and entertainment, I did mostly focus on things that were posted through Yale at CMS, where I felt like I had a good chance. I would say for people who were 100% in on media and entertainment, I think some of them both use the CMS resources and were doing a lot more constantly checking for LinkedIn postings or looking at other job boards. But I really did find that Yale had a variety of postings, that there were a lot of jobs that I was interested in. And I also did leverage some broader Yale resources, particularly in terms of networking and coffee chats, but also some events and postings.
Awesome. Thank you, Monica. So Ching, similar question to you in terms of just process, the time and how are you thinking about looking for things, and then how much of it was both via SOM and CMS or Yale resources, and how much of it was networking on your own?
Sounds good. So I was really focused on technology and media entertainment. So I think in a similar boat as Monica, I was convinced that I'm not interested in consulting and finance. And most of the positions there came, I think, after January. So the positions started getting posted from basically January to May, that entire timeline. But again, networking with people and talking to people from like Yale alums or SOM alums start in the fall, right? So like the networking process is really early. And I think in terms of leveraging resources, it came to 3 parts. One is resume and cover letter and just like getting myself ready. And that I used a lot of CDO and also second years when I was a first year, like their help. 2 was more networking, and networking I focused on talking to both SOM alums and also alums from the wider Yale college. And I think like specifically for EA2, I talked to one alum from Yale SOM, another one from the college, and everyone's pretty receptive to emails, almost 100% hit rate. So it's a great community. And I think the last part I wanted to mention was also when I started applying, looking at job positions, I actually used both. So like Monica said, because I was looking at specifically technology and entertainment, I used both the Yale catalogs and also LinkedIn and Google a lot when I was finding new roles. But when I actually started interviewing, though, I did realize that the interviewers really recognized the Yale brand. They asked me a lot about Yale and about my life at SOM, so that was also a great experience too.
Awesome. Chang, thank you. And Stephanie, a question to you on just the process-wise, knowing that you secured your internship later in the spring, what was it like for you to make the decision to focus on something like that? And then just from a relationship building and process within the network, what was it like when you went out there? How did you leverage SOM, Yale, your own network, and just talk a little bit about that and what that process was like?
So once I kind of went off the traditional grid, it was really just leveraging my own network, and I was just reaching out to companies that I knew and people that I liked. And when you come at them with Yale, they're just like, whatever you want to do. There was like a long period of time where I didn't hear back from the company that I worked for, and I thought that I just didn't get it. And it was only because the first person I emailed was a teacher, and they were just like, I don't even know what to do with this. And then like 3 weeks later, I got an email from the COO, and he was like, call me, I would love to have you work for us this summer. So I think with Yale on your resume, it's really easy to start targeting little specific niche areas. Like you have a great resource to be able to look at the MBA specific roles in media and entertainment when you go to SOM. But if you want to go off on your own, you really have the network from alumni and the resources you need to just make it happen.
Stephanie, I'm going to stay with you on this one because you mentioned a question that I've seen a couple of times, which is about those types of roles. So when you look broadly speaking at media entertainment, what are the themes you see in the sort of functions that at least come to SOM, or when you talk to people in the space, what sort of roles do you typically see or find that either you were looking at or classmates and friends were looking at in the space? What do those look like?
A lot of the roles are typically product marketing. I was specifically looking at product management, which was my role prior to SOM. And so initially I thought it was kind of strange to be applying to the same role that I had before, but it is a bit different once you have your MBA. It's at a higher leadership level. Definitely business strategy. That was kind of what I worked in this summer. So I would say that those are the main business functions of the MBA roles.
Awesome. Thank you. Monica Chang, anything you'd add on that in terms of the types of roles that you see in the sector, or what it was like when you were doing research?
Just finance as well.
Yes, so I would say like it's the media entertainment recruiting is not as streamlined compared to other industries, and because of that, there are a pretty wide variety of roles. So like I think as we mentioned, marketing, finance, there's also operations, there's also strategy, there's product management. So I think like the possibility in terms of function is pretty diverse.
Awesome. And Cheng, I'm going to go to you. I just have another question that's come through a couple of times about transitioning into media entertainment without the industry experience particularly. What was that like? How receptive were people when you had the conversation? And how did you think about leveraging your past skills to land the job at EA and then just network broadly?
I think the key to that is more so to show that you have the necessary skills to succeed in the role that you're looking for. So specifically what I did was looking at my background and trying to think about what skills do I have that I can demonstrate that will indicate my success, right? So for me, my mathematics background and also background in business, I can say I have a very strong analytical background and a very strong financial modeling background, right? And then because I was targeting a strategy role and a data analytics role, then I can say that I know your daily work requires financial modeling and understanding markets and doing data analysis. And I think my mathematics and financial modeling perfectly suits that. So it's more about leveraging, I think, the like historical background and just finding pieces where that ties directly to the roles that I was looking for.
And did you find when you were talking to folks at EA specifically, because you landed there for the summer, that it was a challenge to communicate your interest in the space, or what was it like when they asked the question about breaking into the industry, or how did you manage that?
It was actually not a challenge at all when I was talking, because I think I made it pretty clear that I'm interested in gaming. I think that wasn't very hard to establish. And then in addition to that, they were like, what's your background, right? Because we do these things. And then I think by explaining my background and telling them my thought process of how that background ties into my understanding of what they do every day, they were actually pretty receptive. So I think as long as that's explained, it's a pretty easy thing to do to communicate.
Cool.
You just have to do the work beforehand to think about how it comes.
Yes. And if you say you're interested in gaming, you have to be interested in gaming and be able to talk about what you're interested in. Probably.
That is true.
All right, Cheng, thanks. Monica, next question I'm going to go to you. There's a couple questions that's come through on, I'll call it media adjacent, or the intersections between media and entertainment and tech and business and all that. So how, and you know, going at a place like IBM, obviously there was some connections to the space. So how did you think about it, and what did you see when you thought about the intersection that media has with other industries, or functionally across media and other industries? And what was that like as you kind of think about both of those things through the exploration process?
I mean, I think media intersects with everything. Absolutely. I mean, there are so many opportunities, definitely for media and technology, but like Stephanie was saying, thinking about the intersection of media and just culture and how it affects people. You know, SOM has a really strong connection with Sesame Workshop, which is an incredible program. So I would say there are like endless opportunities depending on what you're interested in. And if you're interested in something really specific, then in some sense, that limits your opportunities, but helps guide your search. Whereas if you're broadly interested, then you sort of can find a lot of opportunities, and you have to sort of figure out your own plan in terms of targeting and what's doable and how to, most of all, genuinely convey interest, because of exactly what Cheng and Mike were just saying, that for media and entertainment in particular, you need to be able to show some sort of genuine connection to the mission of what the company does and the storytelling, even if you don't have a strong previous background. And so, but as long as you can find that and find some sort of connection to your past, I think people are pretty receptive to career switches. So I think there's just a lot out there.
Awesome. Thank you, Monica. Stephanie, I'm going to move to a different direction. There's a bunch of questions about curriculum and classes and the things that you've been able to get through the academics at SOM was related to media, entertainment, and just your career broadly. So are there specific classes, are there specific things across Yale, not just at SOM, that you found particularly helpful, or in just broadly speaking, like how have the academics help you find the path and be more successful in the space?
So as a math undergrad, I really never took finance or any of the kind of traditional business classes. So that was all new to me. And the core curriculum was insanely helpful in my internship this summer. I definitely went from someone that was just able to take on like data science product roles to being able to look at business strategy. So that helped a ton, like especially for any industry. And I think some of the courses outside of SOM and some of the ones within SOM that can be really helpful for a media and entertainment career path are the more technical classes that help you with like business analytics or some of the intro like coding classes, just so you get familiar with it. Even if you're not going to take a role that's technical, being able to not be afraid of talking to an engineer or being comfortable with that is enormously helpful, because every media and entertainment company that's successful today is also a technology company. So you have to be familiar with that world.
Cool. Thank you, Stephanie. Cheng, I'm going to ask a similar question to you just in terms of the academics and how you thought about connecting it to careers and just what that was like. And then if you can talk at all about, there's been some questions about things you did outside of SOM too. So there are other activities or involvement and that sort of thing. And then Monica, I'm going to ask you a question related to that about clubs in a second, just because you mentioned the media entertainment clubs. So Cheng, go ahead.
So I strongly echo what Stephanie was saying. I think the core class is definitely extremely valuable in terms of giving you the holistic picture of a business. For me, I had a background in more finance and math. So for me, the value add was a lot around marketing, right? How do you consider a customer and how do you consider your strategy in response to your customer needs? I think that was extremely valuable to me. And I think that's true for anyone, right? With any background, because you'll get a bit of each area of a business. And I think that's extremely valuable. In terms of specific courses, again, I think analytics is extremely important. EA, for example, brands itself as a technology company, right? It doesn't call itself as a media entertainment. It calls itself as a technology company. And a lot of the work involves looking at data, how to use big data in your everyday decision making, I think. And that's a general theme in the industry right now, in my opinion. So a lot of the courses Stephanie had mentioned, I've taken, and I think that they were extremely helpful. In terms of other involvements, I think the biggest thing I'm involved on is a data analytics club, and I'm a leader for that club. And what we do is basically try to communicate the need for data analytics to the SOM community, and also try to share some of our knowledge on different tools like Python and SQL to the community, with the goal to both help with your everyday work going into the future, and also helping with an interview process. And that's the biggest thing I'm involved on outside of academics.
Cheng, thank you very much. And Monica, same question, of course, if there's classes in academics, but there was a question about the M&E Club, some of the events they put on and some of the things that they think about from a programmatic standpoint. So anything you'd say to address questions related to that?
Sure. Yeah. So I echo what Stephanie and Cheng said, definitely about just hard skills, I think are so valuable, those classes. And I mean, Yale is great in that you do have the opportunity to take classes at the School of Drama, the School of Art. I'm taking an undergrad class right now in art history. That's great. So there are a lot of opportunities, and there are other opportunities all over Yale as well. Like right now, I'm in the process of figuring out if a fellowship with the Yale Review, which is a 200-year-old literary magazine, is going to work out, sort of helping them relaunch for their 200th year. So there are opportunities if you sort of keep your eyes open. In terms of the Media and Entertainment Club, it is the best club on campus. It's super fun. we are very much a club that's a mix of social and career oriented, and the particular balance really does just depend year to year on the members and what people are looking for. But I would say that the group of students who are interested in professional development in the media and entertainment space has definitely grown over the last several years. So we've sort of been able to increase our programming on that side. So in terms of professional development, a lot of what we do is just bring speakers and panels in, both SOM alums, broader Yale alums, just so that people sort of have an idea of what the MBA opportunities are out there. In January, there's usually a big job trek to LA, which this year will be some combination of virtual events. And then normally, both in the spring and the fall, depending on the schedule, we'll go to New York and go to companies like Disney Theatrical and SiriusXM. And there are a lot of, ESPN is in Connecticut. So those are all sort of places that we went last year. On the social side, we do a lot of screening parties. We do a lot of trying to collaborate with other clubs. Just to reiterate to people, media and entertainment hits everything. So we did a lot of debate watches this fall, which was cathartic, I think, for a lot of people to be able to be together even virtually. But it is very club driven. So if you have ideas, the media and entertainment club is very open to sort of whatever direction first years come in wanting to go.
Awesome. Thank you, Monica. There's a number of questions, and I'm not going to cold call anybody on this, so I'll have any of the panelists hop in who feel comfortable answering the question. I'm more than happy to give my perspective as well. There's a couple questions that are asking just a little click below on some of the specific segments within media entertainment. So specifically, what have you all seen from classmates, peers, yourselves around sports? And so the organizations or the types of jobs that students focus on within sports, and then types of jobs or organizations that focus on gaming. And so there's a lot of questions related to who those organizations are. And again, just a disclaimer, if any of these students mention specific organizations, there's way more for sure. It's just what we're all choosing to use. So I will certainly get my perspective on how to navigate some of those spaces that might not have formulaic recruiting processes and what I've seen in my couple of years here and the people I work with. But just curious to get your perspective, specifically sports and gaming. But if there's other specific verticals within this space, would love to get your perspective that you see. Once you unmute yourself, you're going to go. So whoever unmutes themselves first.
I can talk about sports maybe a little bit, Chang, and then you can talk about gaming.
Go ahead.
So I would say, sports is broad, and there are definitely alums or people who have worked for ESPN, for the NBA. I know because I was listening to a podcast recently that we have an EMBA alum who is the head of marketing for the Bruins. We've had speakers who have helped launch the what are they called? The Kraken in Seattle.
Yep.
There are people who work in women's sports. We're currently in the process of talking to actually, I believe, a law school alum who owns a soccer team in Connecticut that's very cool and is interested in connecting with SOM students. So sports is definitely kind of niche, or it's not a niche industry, but I would say the recruiting process is pretty niche, and that it definitely requires a lot of legwork and passion and networking. But I do think that there are alums, there are channels both within SOM and broader Yale for connecting with people. And especially, it's the kind of industry, like all of media and entertainment, that more and more they're looking for people with hard skills.
Thanks, Monica. Yeah, Stephanie, go ahead.
Circling back to the coursework question for sports specifically, in your second year, there's an elective you can take called sports analytics, and it's kind of a continuation of I'm not in it, but it's a continuation of probability and stats specifically around sports. And they always have cool speakers. And just a few weeks ago, they could tell the TA was freaking out and getting really stressed. And then Mark Cuban popped in on this Monday night SOM class.
Ah, cool. So Chang, similar question to you obviously about gaming. I know that was Monica kind of put you on the spot, but I'll put you on the spot too. Okay.
Well, I first of all, I think I echo a lot about these sports, and I think just based on what I heard, like just around from people around me in terms of the jobs offers that we're getting and also the companies that we're talking to, I think for gaming, there's Epic Games, Unity, and also Riot, in addition to EA, obviously, that definitely look hires from SOM. And sports too, I've heard about NBA, MLB, so definitely a lot of opportunities. And in terms of class too, there's also another class called social media analytics that is another expansion of data science and looking specifically on Twitter, etc., to look at people's preferences in terms of like media and entertainment contents. So pretty cool classes overall.
Awesome. Thank you both. One just quick anecdote I'll give. So this is my 5th fall, so I've been around and certainly talked to students interested in a number of different spaces. And in many ways, Stephanie said it before, of like the entry that you get via SOM is like you can kind of do anything you want. And I don't mean that to be glib. I mean that in many ways, where if there's something that you think you have the ability to do and you have the functional skills, the experience for, the passion for, the opportunities are there. And so much of what you can do, whether or not a company might formally come to campus and they're trying to hire the head of a group, but they may not think to come to an MBA program, but because you're here, just the access you get to some of those people and the conversations you can have in many ways, because not just because you're at Yale, because you're a student who's trying to learn and evolve. And so I think the doors that can be opened, especially within the media entertainment space and the sports space particularly, I know the alum you're talking about who's at the Kraken, Monica, like the amount of conversations that she had while she was here was so cool because she was a student interested in this space, that there's really nothing that's off the table, at least to have that conversation to, and then start to think about how you could break into the zone. We've mentioned a lot of the companies that come up, and I think there's probably so many more, and the people I think about in this space have done a lot of cool things. Stephanie, I'm going to come to you on a slightly different question, but it's been asked a couple of times and related a little bit to some conversations we've had before, but this is one you experienced in the summer, your experience before business school. Can you talk a little bit about the intersection between, within media, within entertainment, the intersection between, it's been asked as the business and the creative, but just how those things come together from a content creation and a business side of things, and what that's like and what your exposure's been both before and over the summer?
Yeah, so I'll speak about my internship this summer because I think that was like the perfect intersection for me, especially at smaller companies. When you're in a product management role, you're really sitting in between, at least in my experience, engineering and marketing. And if you have a good understanding of what the media or what the asset is. So for example, when I was working in fitness, if you really understand that piece, and then you can dabble in the technical side and you can understand marketing, you can be the one that's informing marketing and business strategy using the data and your knowledge of media and entertainment to inform that. So there's a lot of really interesting roles that you can find that even though they don't seem to be a marketing role or a creative role, you can inform that. There's also like some of the internships I was applying for were content management roles. So you're sitting in the meetings with the people that are pitching the new content that the company might be acquiring or looking and investing in. So there's I definitely am a creative brain in addition to a mathematical and science brain. There's so much opportunity for that.
Awesome. Stephanie, thanks so much. I'm going to ask a question that I'm just curious to get all of your thoughts in terms of, like, there's multiple places that you've all looked at for the summer, for full time. As you think about whether or not you are going to target media entertainment for full time, but like as you think about your, and again, this is not meant to be like one of those trick questions about tell me your 10-year plan, but in terms of the balance that you're trying to strike between these specific industries and the functions, like how are you viewing how you'll move within the path, whether it's in media entertainment, whether it's in a certain function, and some of the skills that you think will be valuable that you're acquiring at SOM as you think about whatever the long-term path is. And Chang, I'll start with you, especially because you did make an industry pivot to come to EA. Do you think you'll stay on the business side of things, focus on mathematics? Will you move more content, or what has that been like, and how are you thinking about that?
I think long term, I guess like basing this on my internship experience, I think I really enjoy being able to do both. So like business analytics and at the same time doing strategy. So I think long term, my plan is probably stay in the same function, definitely. Not sure about obviously in terms of like the industry wise, if I'm gonna continue to stay in gaming, but I think doing analytics and also doing business strategy is definitely something that I'm interested in long term.
Cool. And Monica, somewhat similar question, but in a different tone. So worked at IBM over the summer and now exploring a lot of different opportunities. As you think about the first job when you get out of SOM, is there something specific that you're optimizing, that there's questions you're trying to answer within the media entertainment space? And how are you trying to leverage the experience you had before business school and then specifically with IBM over the summer to help manage that decision-making process for full-time?
Yeah, I think that's exactly the right framing, especially for people who don't know exactly what they want to do, is sort of to think about testing hypotheses. And so one reason, in addition to liking the people that I went to IBM, was to sort of see how working at a big company felt and whether I would like that, because I'd worked at a 25-person company for 5 years. And so I do think, sort of as I think about my next role, a lot of my question is sort of whether I can find a job where I get to do more sort of like big picture, long-term strategy thinking, and how, I guess, how those roles sort of fit into day-to-day data analytics, building on sort of my market research background, but answering new questions about a new industry. So I would say I'm still sort of looking at a lot of areas, but those are some of the questions that I'm asking myself right now.
Awesome, Monica, thanks so much. And then Stephanie, I'm going to ask you the last question. Then we're gonna end with the question that we teed up at the end for folks to end with. So I know last spring you made the clear decision to say, like, I'm worried I'm going to get Zoom fatigue. I think everybody probably has even more Zoom fatigue. And you said, number one thing I want is like an organization I know I can get behind. And I really want to enjoy the work that I'm doing, and it sounds like you did enjoy that, which is awesome. As you think about full-time, are you thinking about those same criteria and the same framework? Are you thinking about different sort of organizations? And what has it been like as you start to think 10 months from now, what position you'll be in, or how you think about entering the media and entertainment space and what that's going to be like?
My strategy now is definitely my spring come to Jesus moment strategy. I had such a good summer experience that I realized like I can really formulate something like this for my full-time role. So this summer really taught me like where I want to sit within a business and cemented what I thought I knew what my talents were. And the biggest learning I think for me this summer was that I really do want to work for a mid-sized company. It was so refreshing working somewhere where you could have an idea and within 2 weeks it was a reality. So that's how I'm targeting my search for full-time roles.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Thanks for the questions, everyone. There's some really wonderful questions that came through. I hope we hit most of them. I seem to think that we did. The one thing I will say, again, as someone who's been here for a decent amount of time and who's worked with a lot of students, the beauty of media and entertainment is it is not as static as some of the traditional industries. Like consulting. In media and entertainment is a lot of what you make it, what types of organizations you want, how you think about applying some of the skills that you can attain in different industries, and then how each individual person even defines the concept of media entertainment is very subjective. And so there's a lot of things that I've certainly had that I view myself the privilege to see people do some of those things. And I hope you all view the opportunities that you have to find something that truly is unique to you in what you're interested in. And the media entertainment space is like an opportunity that's one of the coolest about, I think, SOM and just your career trajectory, broadly speaking. We're getting a couple more that get tossed in here. Entrepreneurship in media entertainment. And I think there was a question around that too, related to classes and things. Stephanie, I'm going to cold call you, sorry. You worked at a smaller company last year. You talked a little bit about the classes related to entrepreneurship and startups, entrepreneurship and media entertainment. Any perspective around the intersection between those two things, how you think about it, or what your experience has been like?
I'm personally not somebody that wants to start my own company or be an entrepreneur, but I have many friends that do and are in the courses where you can just have support for your own startup. I know many people in our class that have started their own startups. Can't speak, I don't really know what entrepreneurship in media is. If you want to start your own media company, send it my way and I'll support you.
Again, another anecdote. There was an alum who graduated last year who joined as the chief of staff. I'm not going to name who she is or what the company is, but she joined as the chief of staff to like a 10-person new media outlet. So again, it's just one of those things where I think there's opportunities across the board. I do believe like Kyle and Jen, who are the leaders of the Entrepreneurship Suite down, I say in the basement of Evans Hall, I'm in the beautiful Evans Hall. They have an awesome curriculum around how they think about building your own business, right? And so there's so much training you can get how to think about that, whether it's media and entertainment or any startup or conversation you want to have. Last question. So we teed this up in the email to you guys, so this hopefully isn't a cold call. Put yourself in I'm on one of these webinars with these people I've never seen before, and they're talking to me about media entertainment, and I'm trying to make a decision on SOM, on my career, if it makes sense. What advice would you give to yourself 2 years ago, or to someone who might be in this call? We'll go Chang, Monica, and Stephanie will have you in. So Chang, what advice would you give to a prospective student?
Cool. I think I have two. One is more general and one specifically around recruiting. So the general one is more so going back to my first point about community. I think when you think about which business school is the best fit for you, you really want to understand what the community values and what the culture is like at the business school, because you're going to be here for 2 years, and the friends you make in the community you're in is probably the biggest value add to your experience. So I think that's the most important thing that you want to consider as part of when you decide which school is the best for you. And I think specifically about recruiting, once you come to SOM, you'll realize that there's abundance of resources everywhere, right? And you'll never be able to take advantage of all of it. But at the end of the day is what you make of it, right? So you gotta make sure that you have a goal and you try to identify which resources is best fit for your goal and make use of them as much as possible. And it's like, I think the opportunities are there, but it's up to you to take advantage of it.
Awesome. Chang, thank you very much. Monica?
Yeah, I think my advice is, first of all, be kind to yourself. It's a long process and a hard process, but it'll all be all right. And think about what you want and what's really important to you, because there are trade-offs, whatever you ultimately decide. And like Cheng said, I think SOM's chief strength is its incredible community and the diversity of the people who end up here and their backgrounds, because there are so many people with non-traditional MBA backgrounds, and you can really learn so much from your classmates. So if the depth of media and entertainment coursework itself is important to you, that's one consideration. But if you're interested in really taking advantage of a world-class university with just so many open resources, and you like the vibe of the people you meet at SOM, people are extremely genuine here, and this is really what it will be like.
Awesome. Monica, thanks. Stephanie?
All right, so 3 pieces of advice. The first, trust in the universe. And people always say that to you after stuff works out for them, but that was what I always kept in mind throughout the process. And I promise you, I had a very last minute round 3 applying to business school, trusting in the universe process. The second, be yourself. If you're trying, sometimes you'll try to fit yourself into what you think the mold is, but you truly don't know what the mold is. And I think that advice holds even when you start business school. And it was when I really was my true self that I found where I could fit and shine in this community. And then the last, and I'm doing admissions interviews this year, and this one's so important, I always look for it, is making it really clear and knowing, you have to do some soul searching yourself to make sure that SOM is the right school for you, and then making that reasoning so clear when you're applying.
Awesome. Stephanie, Monica, Chang, pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks for your advice, for your help, for the conversation. People who attended, thank you very much. It really was great to get to see all of you. This is the courtyard at Evans, so it feels like I'm on campus. I hope we all have a great Wednesday. Happy Veterans Day. Any veterans out there, thank you very much for your service. Hope to see you on campus in the coming years, coming months, and have a wonderful day, everyone. We can sign off.